Mars saw the Doctor pitted once again against his old enemies, the Ice Warriors. Reimagined for the new series, our next guest played one of the Ice Warriors in this episode, Friday. It's a story that's fondly remembered, so please welcome Richard Ashton to discuss his time on Doctor Who. Hi there, Richard. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you.
I've brought another deadly monster foe along with me to keep me company during this interview, Daleks Ice Warriors.
That's terrifying. They still terrify me. They always will terrify me. No, absolutely. It's something I try and explain at conventions. When you grow up with that image in your mind, it doesn't matter subsequently, stairs and all those issues. No. That's a Dalek. Yeah.
And I mean, I suppose you probably grew up watching the series anyway, so you would have been aware of them anyway.
Oh, no, absolutely, 100%. And that's the other thing is, I'm so old, we had 3 television stations. And if it was Saturday, you were watching BBC One, and so you were watching Doctor Who. Everybody was. And the other element, of course, is that we had no VHS. We had no repeats, as far as I remember. So that was it. That was your opportunity. And so the show lived as much in your imagination when you go back to school on Monday as ever it did whilst you were watching it. And I've realised since collecting some of the earlier DVDs, I say this to Katie Manning when we meet, it's amazing. I can remember from one viewing things that people did in those episodes. And I see the DVD and go, yep, that's how I remember it. Been playing in here for, 45 years or something, just working away.
Yeah. It's always interesting, actually, particularly as you got to play what is probably quite an iconic monster from Doctor Who anyway. And of course, they've been re-engineered, and Ice Warriors have always been quite a favourite of mine anyway. So from that perspective, I think the way that the new series treated them was I think quite impressive in all honesty.
Yeah. It was very exciting for me, and I know a lot of people said our episode was quite like a classic Who, but of course we're referencing episode from the classic Who, which again I remember completely. That it felt very privileged, actually, not only to be able to get to be an Ice Warrior, but also to use my own voice and to work with the inflections and work with the suit, just as you would in any other character. I mean, I would have done it, frankly, if they'd stuck me in the corner with a box on my head. No, seriously. I hadn't done a suit character since The Fifth Element. And that really was, lifting 2 telephone boxes around looking at a video screen. And I loved doing that. It was great. But I hadn't done a suit character like that in all that time. And so when it came up, I thought, well, look, it's good enough for Bernard Bresslaw. It's got to be good enough for me. You just do it. You just do it. It's the chance to be in that space, and quite genuinely, I found myself standing there on set, dripping, exhausted, disorientated, dehydrated, going, I'm in Doctor Who. And obviously at that point, I'd done quite a lot of film, quite a lot of telly, number 4 on the call sheet and all that kind of thing, working for Warner Brothers in America. Thank you very much. No. I'm in Doctor Who. You could probably shoot me now. Yeah.
And it's kind of nice. It's whilst I'm sure it's quite a restrictive costume in ways, it is nice because it is your own voice. It is you. So you are putting a characterization into it. So Friday is your own character, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's very, very well written. And interestingly, the first storyline, there was even more of a coming together of Friday and Bill. And actually, they had their little denouement before they built up Anthony's character into being the pivot. It's very well written, is what I'm trying to say. So when they say, right, you stand over there and you're washing up, you already know what that means. You already know what the gag is. They're very well written, these scripts, and they are shot reasonably speedily. But they have to be well written because you look at it and you go, right, I get it. And everybody that I was working with at Millennium, discussing how the suit should move, the things you should do, the things you shouldn't do. So they give you a palette of gestures, if you like. And because I did a lot of puppetry in my early career, that's how you treat it. It's a puppet, and the puppet, of course, is you. That very interesting thing of object theatre. And I say, okay, it's bucket on head acting. I think there should be an Oscar for it. There should, because of course it isn't bucket on head acting. It's just acting with a bucket on your head, you know.
And of course, it's almost then, I suppose, you're almost choreographed then. So all the movement and all the sort of gestures, it
is, because you're so aware that you're bigger than anything else on screen, unless it's, you know, a mountain or something. So all those little gestures will tell. And of course, you've got the difficulty of not being able to see a single thing. And that there is a thing that made it through to the final episode, which was brilliant. I was trying desperately in the serving tea scene to negotiate everybody and get round to Peter's side of the table. And I just clonked Ferdy. I mean, I couldn't see him. And he absolutely went with it and just gave me a filthy look, which established a relationship there. It was one of those classic pieces. You go, that's what you get when you put actors on set, you know, who go, right, I'll just deal with this. I'll work with this. I'll go with this. And lovely things happen. And that was just one of the nice little things that happened. That was actually because of the limitation of the costume. Actually, something great came out of it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, they look very spectacular on screen as well, as far as I'm concerned. And you know, the
that's the key behind why they're so heavy and why they're so hot. They're made of quite an old-fashioned 2-part plastic, which gives an incredibly hard, burnished surface on which then they can texture that iridescent beetle sort of glow. So it's one of those things that really does look as fantastic up close as it does once the thing's been graded and coloured and mixed and everything. And everybody's quite sort of, quite protective about them. They send somebody from Millennium to be your minder, and you start to realise very, very quickly they're not there to protect you; they're there to protect the suit, which is quite right, because you know, in other things, people have dropped suits like that and cost $250,000, and you think, oh yeah, that's not good.
Yeah,
goodness knows what they cost to make.
I was going to ask you, were there any mishaps whilst you were in costume?
Oh yeah, well yes, famously. And when I was staff at the BBC, I was staff at BBC Radio a billion years ago before I went to university. And there always used to be a Christmas blooper tape that went round radio. And then I think periodically something from TV used to go around as well. And if anybody out there is collecting and collating those things from the dailies, in that sequence, which we filmed in the cave in Bristol, of me rushing towards Peter before he stops me, I'm charging along in this cave in Bristol. There is no head clearance. There is actually none. The cave is exactly the same height as me, and it's only by sheer luck that we've managed to get at least one decent take, because in one of them I'm going as fast as I possibly can and not the ceiling of the cave. And of course, the thing you're told is, do not fall over. Do not fall over. It doesn't matter what happens, because it'll take 6 people to pick you up, because you can't get yourself up in those things. You can't. And yeah, they checked the top of the helmet, and it seemed okay, so that was all right, and we carried on. But I'd love to see if that's there, because it would look pretty funny, I think.
Yeah, I remember the old bloopers tapes of the 70s, that's for sure.
Yeah,
exactly. They were, it was almost like the ultimate pirate VHS that you could get a hold of.
Well, it was. Somebody used to come around the office when I worked at Grafton House, and sort of this brown paper envelope would, you know, arrive with this brick in it, and it would be the tapes, you know, and then we're all under oath not to copy it. So of course everybody did, and give it to all our friends and family and whatever. So there must be a bunch of them out there somewhere.
Oh, there are. Absolutely. Right. And there were certainly, I've enjoyed one or two of them over my time, that's for sure. You talked about Peter. He's racing headlong down a corridor.
Oh, yeah.
Not to bang your head. And you've got Peter Capaldi in front of you. One of my favourite Doctors. What was that like for you?
It was fantastic, because he's always been a huge hero. You know, I mean, I'm the generation as a middle teenager went to see Local Hero and just thought, who is this guy? And how is he doing what he's doing? And then, of course, we went through all his other work at Malcolm Tucker. And I'd expected him to be just this marvellous, lovely actor, and thought, oh, yeah, that's a nice privilege, you know, sort of bragging rights or whatever. And actually what we got was this astonishing human being who walked up to us in the suits and said, listen, you know, we might not get a chance to look at each other very much during this. It's really important you're here. Now that was such a lovely thing to say. And he said, "You're an actor. It's really important that you're here. We really need you to do this." And he worked so phenomenally hard. He was forever working the script. He was ever working, and brilliantly not usurping the director, which is very unusual. I've worked with a few big stars who basically the poor old director is made to sit in the corner on a chair and then film whatever it is that we work out. Yeah, something he wanted to do people particularly. Not him. He just worked whatever was given. So he's always working the script, always trying to, and that energy pushes you all forward, which is tremendously important, because when you're 12 hours into a day and you're starting to think, oh, okay, this is going to get tough, there's this energy that's carrying you through. And then if somebody had brought somebody, to the set, some kids or somebody else, he would always have a corner of his eye to go and see them as well. How he did it, I don't know. And he does this brilliant thing. I don't know if other people have talked about this. He did a little drawing cartoon on the front page of our scripts for us, because he's a phenomenal artist. And it's very moving, the whole thing. Really, very great.
Some of his autographs are quite, he really goes to town on some of his autographs.
Right, yeah. What is it? I mean, from what I remember, certainly for me and for one or two other people, well, there were two other guys who were in the ice water costumes and somebody else, he did this beautiful drawing, on the front page of the script. I don't know, you don't often get that. You really don't.
The sign of a true leader of a show, though.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And therefore, if there were difficulties, you were following his lead. Then you were following his, and we had some changes of personnel and some different things happened. No, it doesn't matter. Peter's there. We're driving forward. We're working forward. I've done some quite long running series on which I've been somewhere up there in the pecking order, and you do think, hang on, if I turn up looking with a face like a bag full of spanners and grump about the place, what's left for everybody else? And I've had people who haven't been so helpful in that role as well, because perhaps they're a bit too fragile, I think, too worried about themselves. He's astonishingly brave, and very inventive. Yeah, as I say, yeah, definitely a leader of a show. Yeah.
You hear all the stories, and he absolutely always made time for other people. I think quite a generous actor as well from the stories.
Yes, I think that's right, because he does this really interesting thing. He might be really working on something like I remember the washing up scene, which ended up, I think, largely cut out, but ended up on BBC America, so you can get that on that, which is brilliant. He was doing all this lovely stuff, but wasn't busy. He left loads of room for Pearl. He even left room for me just to stand there and look. It was, this is the greatest compliment I can pay, it was so much more like being in the theatre than ever I felt on a television set, which sometimes the whole of it just crowds in on you, and you're trying to force the words out through whatever opportunity or gap there is. There was much more space, and I think that's to do with his generosity. And I guess self-confidence.
Yeah, I'd agree with that, and I think he was also so in love with the show anyway. He was a fan, and he knew his stuff. So ultimately, I think it was his dream, I think, to actually get to play that part.
Well, I mentioned remembering seeing the Peladon episode or series. Oh, he was there before me. He knew the lot. And that's also really refreshing, because then you get the feeling that you're all there to celebrate. That's why this is a very special show, because it ends up being everybody celebrating the same thing. And that's why conventions are a joy, again, because you're not there going, oh, look at me. You're actually going, isn't it great? Isn't it rich? And then and of course, the other brilliant thing is, rather like Peter, somebody always knows stuff you don't know, or makes a connection you haven't made, or sees a correlation in it. So yeah, proper fandom, mate.
It was kind of nice, because we weren't spoilt at all on what was happening at the end of this particular episode. I think the episode is fantastic. In fact, one of the best of that season. But then we get that little surprise at the very end when Alpha Centauri is brought in, and you get that sort of link back to Peladon, wow, what a jaw dropper that was.
Yeah, no, it was. That was the real tingle time. And this lovely idea of looping together time. And of course, for me, it was a perfect circle, because it took me back to when, I mean, how old would I have been then? 10, 11, perhaps a little bit older. And it took me right back to that moment. It was actually quite, because that's one of the images we all remember, right? You know, when Alpha Centauri, that's got to be one of the things that everyone, because it's just so unexpected. And I don't care how many CGI aliens you're ever going to get in your life, you're going to remember Alpha Centauri. That's fantastic.
Well, this particular episode aired during our Utopia weekend at that time. And several of the crew had gone up to watch it upstairs, because we were in between the sort of entertainment and the daytime entertainment. And oh my Lord, you could hear that entire hotel scream almost when Alpha Centauri came on. And what was amazing, we had Adele Lynch as one of our guests as well. So she was.
That's right.
So it was literally the following day, Adele sat downstairs and she had the biggest queue I've seen in a long while at a convention.
Well, she's phenomenal as well. I'm very sorry that so far nobody's thought to get the two of us together into a con, because we ought to have such a laugh. She's another great leader, you know. And I mean, I know in all her other work and her drama work and her script work and everything that she does, it's a role that she assumes quite naturally. She's a phenomenon, and it will be really fun to do a con with her. But she's very busy in all kinds of ways. Yeah, I remember her doing that, thinking, "Oh, blimey, that would have been good." Yeah,
it would have been, and of course, it was just perfect timing for us. And I think, like I said, she has been quite busy since then. But we'll do our best to get you two together.
I think it will be a laugh.
When we're back in the real world, we're definitely going to try and do that. But you can see that quality in her as well, in her acting. The way she portrayed the Queen, I think, was just immense.
Well, it's astonishing physicality, because her suit was slightly different to mine in that it was a lot softer, more malleable, but actually in a funny kind of way, more encompassing. The heat was an issue for both of us. I mean, I don't think you can get away from that. We're both neither of us is a small person, and actually you do generate a lot of heat in these bodies, and those suits don't let them escape at all. So to keep that through line, to keep that energy going, she's another one who leads by example with the energy of her performance, and therefore allows, like, let's say me, obviously being, you know, sidekick or whatever you want to call me, it leaves you much more space just to be and inhabit. There are no voids to fill when Adele's about. You just go with it, and that's tremendous as an actor, to have that sort of energy to work next to.
And when you look at that, when you take that energy and you take the sort of caliber of the people in it and the script, and you put all that together, I think that's really the main ingredients of what I think make this particularly a standout episode.
I think that's why we were really lucky, and it never occurred to me this, okay, but I never had any fear at all about what was going to happen with the episode. And I have to say that is not usually the case. How do I put this? People might know I had an earlier career as being the BBC hippie in lots of sitcoms and things like that. And you'd get these scripts that had the right names on them and the right things on them, and then you read it and go, oh dear, how are we going to make this work? You know, Tony Britton, who's only just died, God bless him, expertly tossed one of our scripts into a bin in the corner of the room and said, well, I think I know what we're not going to be doing this time next year, you know. And you follow someone like that, because he could take the back of a cornflakes packet, as could Jack Smethurst, who was in the same show, and make it into something wonderful. Anna Dawson, people like that, you know. And when you've got something that even they can't lift into something special. So it only occurred to me afterwards, when I first opened the first page of the script, before the read-through, I was just excited, because I got all of it, you know. I mean, I find Mark Gatiss' writing very sort of, you know, it's somewhere in the same film studies world head that I've grown up with. I find it easy to see what he's referencing, where we're going, what to do, what not to do. so that was really exciting. No, we were dead lucky, and it's cast brilliantly. I mean, you look at every single actor in that show, and you think, perfect, perfect, amazing.
I can only imagine what the read-through was like, actually, because when you've got not only the cast we've talked about, but you've got Matt Lucas and you've got Michelle Gomez, and imagine that table would have just been a riot all the way through read-through.
Well, it was astonishing because we read 2 episodes together, which apparently is the way they like to do it, because it gives you, a bit of a throughput and all that kind of thing. And at the same time, Mark Gatiss' King George just appeared the night before on Taboo. Is that right? Have I got that right? Yeah, I think so. So I feel like I'm in this room full of royalty. Yeah. No, seriously, though. Because, yes, we're reading 2 episodes of Doctor Who. That should be important enough. But we took the time out to congratulate him on his performance the night before. And you suddenly feel like you're in one of these, what do they call it? Like a circus of the talents. And you think, oh, this is a really nice place to be. I'm going to enjoy being here for 5 weeks, which I did. Not that I got to see people very often in the evenings, because they were all in the bar and I was still in Creature Effects getting out the Ice Warrior. But
I was going to ask, actually, how long did it take to get in and out?
We asked for 2.5 hours. And I think the first time we asked for 3, and then no, can you get it down to 2.5? Because it's obviously they've got cost and time constraints. But we used every little bit of that, because there was a 2-part prosthetic, there was all the rest of the makeup, then there was putting the suit on, then there was checking the suit worked, getting you to the place you should be. And pretty much the reverse process had to be just as careful. So yeah, I guess it was 15-hour days mostly, a bit more sometimes. And then I'd get back to the hotel in a slightly altered state, if I'm honest. So I'd go and sit in the swimming pool and do some swimming and sit. There was a cold plunge pool there, which is brilliant. Sit in that for a bit. And then I'd come in and maybe catch the last pint with everybody in the hotel bar. Because they're already, I don't know, it's like being in an alternate reality. It really is. Those sort of suits do take quite a lot out of you. But it was worth it. And I think we knew it was worth it. I think everybody, because, oh my gosh, look at the soldiers. Imagine what they're wearing under full studio lights. We're all shuffling about in 4 inches of red dirt in the driest, hottest environment you can imagine. Everyone's got these little sort of red snot trails going on. I think it was a pretty tough set for everyone and for the crew too.
Well, one that we appreciate, that's for sure. And the stories that you've told, I think, help us to get an understanding of what it was like to work on that particular show. What projects were you working on prior to lockdown? Anything go on hold?
I was right in the middle of rehearsing a kids writing project in Somerstown, just north of King's Cross, called Seen and Heard, which I always talk about. It's brilliant. The kids there don't have a great deal of opportunities for economic and other reasons. And it's a program I think started in America, but it's been going now for, I want to say, 25 years. And they take 8, 9 and 10-year-olds and turn them into playwrights, or they find the playwright within them. And each child will probably have the opportunity to write and see perform several pieces of work over their time with Seen and Heard. So we were in the middle of rehearsing that. I was a tiger, which is quite good because I was a pepperoni pizza the last time, which is good too. But we knew what was going to happen. Because I was right in the middle of, there were conventions coming up. There was a couple of movies, one for Hallmark, one for the Netflix coming up. And we're all kind of thinking, wait a minute, if this is what we think it is, what are we talking about? And so they took the decision we did a final run through for the tech departments and for the kids and those of their families who could make it in. And then we pulled it because they couldn't take responsibility of having so many people, quite a lot of whom have 3 generations in the same house. It ran out of credibility as an idea, and we just couldn't see how it could be done. So that was a shame. And yeah, everything else has basically, like everyone else, has gone on to, onto that. I mean, the thing is, we're all still auditioning if we can, like this, and doing a lot of script conferences on Zoom, which is quite interesting. I guess so that there will be material and content to shoot if we can work out the protocols of how to do it safely.
Yeah,
you know, that's one of my jobs this afternoon, is to have we're looking at the protocols of the sort of classic 3-week or 3 and a bit week shoot for Netflix on their movies. Can you take actors from the UK, from America, get them to Romania, get it shot in that length of time, and keep everybody safe? And it's going to be tricky. I think we're all going to see the change in the format of the material. But it's sort of very obvious, isn't it? And I know a lot of people have shot things in lockdown. You separate stuff out and you do things more remotely. But the work's the work, and the stories are the stories, and hopefully we'll all keep going.
It's certainly it's reinvented certain things, and you're seeing some different takes and some quirky ways of filming and some different ways of doing things. There'll be a normal at some point, but it's been interesting to see how people have adapted, I think. Do you think those projects that you've been working on, they'll continue and you'll actually pick them up afterwards, do you think?
Yes, you can never say definitely, because other things happen as well. It's like trying to hit a moving target, isn't it? Because the desire for something might change, its function might change. It's particularly if it's something which has been pre-sold. Well, that might change. Certainly something I've been looking at is maybe looking at 1 or 2 of the projects and doing them back to back with the same actors, which I'm really fascinated by, because there was a time when I was shooting a show and we had a repertory of actors who came, and they might spend 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 weeks with us and play as many different parts as they could until all the beards and dodgy hats and things ran out. And then they go home, and then we start again with a new group. Now that was done for economic reasons, I'm certain, but actually it was like repertory. So this is my little thing, is let's have a telly rep then, let's get actors together and do a number of projects, keep everybody safe, give people a chance to perhaps do things that they wouldn't normally do, and for the audience to see them do things they wouldn't normally be cast in, because it's a way we could do it.
Well, time's just about to beat us. Before time beats us, I didn't know this about you, but you talked about Saturday evening telly earlier on in the chat. And Saturday evening television for me, in the age group I grew up, contained a certain Basil Brush, and I believe you did an episode of Basil Brush at some point.
Yes, that was my favourite audition ever. It was with producers at their production HQ, and I walked in, and I even brought a few of my props because I'm such a swot. I walked in, turned around, looked straight at Basil, and said to him, "What are this lot like? Are they okay to work with?" And Michael was there with Basil, and so Basil and I had a conversation. Till eventually the producer said, "Is it all right if we talk to you now?" I said, "I don't know, ask him. He's the boss." And I obviously I did it. It was fab, and the way that they've organised it, it's so flexible. I've got a big soft spot for that kind of work and for those kind of characters. And as far as I am concerned, I was with Basil Brush, the same Basil Brush that I watched as a child. Anybody that can hold a close-up like that without moving, because we all know what Basil's thinking. No, it was terrific. I'm so proud of that. I really am.
I am just a little bit jealous. You've got to work with Peter Capaldi and Basil Brush. I could ask.
I know. Now, I wonder if Peter would like that. Actually, he would. He would probably think that was brilliant.
Richard, it's been an absolute pleasure to chat with you today. Thanks very much for taking time out for us.
Not at all. Great pleasure. Thank you.